Hi class, so I'm back for my public speaking class. We're going to continue our discussion, language of strategy, and we left off talking about how to use words properly. Let's move right in that PowerPoint. And we talked about that, and now we're going to talk about, as soon as I can, there we go. How do we also deliver a clear message by being concise? What do I mean by concise? What does concise even mean? Well, concise means being exact, not using too many words to deliver your message. Kind of in essay writing, oftentimes your job is to use flowery language or use a lot of kind of what I call verbiage to say something. Oftentimes they don't want you to be concise. It depends on what kind of writing you're doing, right? But in speaking, we want you to be as specific as you can be about what you mean. Know what you mean. Concise refers to using the fewest words possible to express your ideas. That's what you're after. Doesn't mean that you might have to write a 20-minute speech, but you want to get your point across. You don't want to spend 5 sentences trying to say one thing. You want to be concise and clear and use as few words as possible. So before we move on to the next piece, I want to reiterate what we just talked about. So in terms of delivering a clear message, we talked about being concise. We talked about using the proper use of words, so clear pronunciation, knowing what you're saying, making the word match what you're talking about. We talked about what word choice, avoid using jargon, right? Be concrete. If you have to talk about something abstract, then at least you need to use concrete words to explain it. We also talked about understanding the meaning of words, right? Denotative, the exact meaning, versus connotative, which we love connotative because it makes us, it's imaginative. And that's really, this is what we're after in this lecture, is for you to become more imaginative in your word use with your speech. I don't mean abstract, just more imaginative. Let's move on. Okay. Effective expression of your ideas. There's that word repetition. Talked about that in the beginning of the lecture. Repetition, repetition, repetition. We love repetition. Repetition also, why do they have that in songs, right? If you think about it, they say that line over and over and over again. It's part of who we are as humans. There's something about repetition also becomes like melodic for us. We like it. If you look back at the famous speech, I have a dream, how many times does he say that? He also says other things in that same speech, not just I have a dream. I think it's either in this time or something, but he says something else in repetition as well. It's not that, he repeats that, right? We like that. It makes us feel like, I really think it's the musical piece of a speech. Hypothetical examples. You got to give us, if you don't have an exact example, you have to give an example of hypothetical means something that's possible, that might happen, right? You need to provide that in your expression. Personal anecdotes. We want to hear little brief stories, right? We want to hear your relationship to your topic. Like, what's your connect? We want that. Remember I told you that you want to provide that in the introduction? We do want to hear that. We want to have that personal anecdotes. Even in your persuasive speech, you still want to include those pieces in it. What else are we talking about? Vivid language. When we mean vivid language, we mean vivid language, like with color. Can we see it? Is it something, are you using language where we can feel like we can touch it? We know the texture of it, right? It appeals to what we call the 5 senses, which are right there: sight, touch, taste, smell, and hearing. Are you describing it in such a way, like, how do you describe the ocean, right? What does it sound like? How would you describe the wind going through the trees, the rustle of the wind through the trees, the crackle of the fire, right? That's what we mean by vivid language. because all of us can then go there and we can actually hear, if we've ever been around a fire, most of us have, we can hear that crackle of a campfire, right? So, and smell. Can we smell it? What does it smell like? If you have been to the ocean, have you been to ocean during red tide? We know that smell. We recognize that smell, right? Or the smell of a magnolia tree, or the smell of roses. So you want to use that kind of language in your speech because it draws people in. We're in it. When you bring that kind of vivid language and you really tell us the colors and what it looked like and what's the shape of it, we can imagine it. We're in. We're taking this ride with you while you deliver your speech. And that's really what you're after. Remember, audience drives the message. Not you, audience. All right, figurative language, also known as figures of speech. Anaphora and epiphora. So, ana means before. Epi means after. So anaphora is that repetition of a word or phrases at the beginning of a speech. Epiphora is the repetition of the word or phrase at the end of the speech. Got it? So you could go to Martin Luther King's speech, I Have a Dream speech, and you'll hear that. He uses a lot of anaphora, a lot of times. You'll see that in other speeches. It's common at the beginning of ideas or concepts to repeat a phrase or sentence or words. Okay? Don't be afraid to do this. It's great speech writing and it's guaranteed engagement. Okay, so I want to encourage you to do that. All right, figurative language, other figures of speech. Alliteration, repetition of consonants. Assonance, repetition of vowels. So what do we mean by that? Well, the consonants, when you hear like the ka sound or the ja sound, it's the way you can hear it. In fact, you're going to hear it in Tim Minchin's speech. You can hear that. It's melodic. Or you're going to hear the O sound, the ah sound, or the E sound. That's a repetition of vowels. As you write that, maybe you have a natural ability to do that, or maybe you have to work a little harder to put that language together. But again, we're bringing it back to the musical quality of words. And when you use alliteration or assonance, we are using that kind of musical quality and it engages us in. And so the one I have, let's see, alliteration. One perfect one that you've heard is Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, right? Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. That's a repetition of consonants. Now it's got both the, it also has like this da 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 da, but it's the P, right? Now repetition of vowels is a little harder. And I used to have this this one with Jesse Jackson said down with dope, which is the O sound, but that's really not a good example. Right now I can't think of a good example, but it's a repetition of the vowel sounds. Okay, like the O, it can be, or the ah, or the E, right? And the E can be literal E or an I in English, right? An E sound. And you could, the I and the Y sometimes sound an E sound. You'll figure it out. Just try it. Just have fun with it. All right, other figures of speech. Antithesis. We love that. We live in this world of comparing and contrasting. Things to demonstrate points of conflict, right? Antithesis. Comparing and contrasting things. When, especially in your persuasive speech, knowing what the other side is a way to demonstrate the points of conflict. If you show how they're so different, that's where you demonstrate the points of conflict. Simile and metaphor. Y'all have been learning about this probably since 2nd or 3rd grade. So simile is when you use like as, and metaphor is when you're comparing two unlike things and showing how they're similar to each other. This is what Mr. Minchin does very, very well in his commencement speech. His thing is his speech is full of metaphor. It's wonderful. And simile as well. Do that. We love that. It helps us visualize and really it engages us. Use that in your speech. Okay, finally, we're at the end of figurative language, and we're going to talk about the appropriate use of language. And this will be the end of this lecture. So obviously, you want to avoid biased language. What do I mean by biased language? It means no racist language. No, be gender neutral, be considerate that there is more than one gender involved in all conversations. So it means don't use sexist language. Don't be sexist in your examples. Don't be racist in your examples. Don't stereotype, right? All of those to be aware of. Think of your audience, right? Of being kind and respectful to your audience. I talked about stereotypes. Gender neutral references, just talked about that. And again, audience-centered language. I think if you can use audience-centered language, when you think about the audience and who's in the audience, you will be considerate. So avoid that stuff. Think about your topic. Is your topic going to be of interest to everyone in the class? Is it neutral in things? Okay. So that is the lecture on how to use language as a strategy. This will bring, when you use any of these techniques in your speech, is going to bring your speech up at a higher level. Okay, you'll begin, rather than just being a neophyte public speaker, you're going to take it a step up. So I want to encourage you all to attempt to use some of these strategies in your speech. The repetition one is easy, but if you could use alliteration or assonance or what's the word I want now? Not assonance, but I just had it. I was just talking about it. Yeah, it was alliteration. Sorry, alliteration. So if you could use alliteration or assonance or even antithesis, but the repetition part should be easy for you, which is anaphora or epiphora or epiphora. Okay, so try to do that. Work on that. You can do this. I totally look forward to your speeches. Awesome. And this is Professor Brennan for public speaking. See you later.